Mr. Barron is coming right out. Let me introduce tonight. I see her somewhere. There she is, Miss Minger. How are you? Miss Minger taught me when I was a high school senior in the musical. And she's still teaching, which is even more amazing after the time because I was not a singer, to say the least. So I'm proud of you guys right here. But let me introduce tonight. We have the Arlington High School Colt Chorale varsity men. Dinah Minger and Mason Barlow are the directors. This choir has been selected to perform at the National Convention of the American Choral Directors Association for 2013. In addition, the chamber choir will be performing at Carnegie Hall in New York City this spring. Congratulations. So tonight I think they're singing, and Miss Minger, Plenty Good Men by Moses Hogan. So I'll throw it over to you, Miss Minger.
He's called Plenty Good Room, and we're just going to let you have it.
There's room enough for you, and room enough for me. So choose your seat and sit down. So choose your seat, sit down, I know there's plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom, plenty good room, so choose your seat, sit down.
I would not be a backslider, and I tell you the reason why.
No, if my Lord should call on me, no, I wouldn't be ready to die. I know there's plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom, plenty good room, so choose your seat, sit down.
I would not be a liar, I'll tell you the reason why. 'Cause if my Lord should call on me,
no, I wouldn't be ready to die. I know there's plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom, plenty good room, so choose your seat. Down I said I'm on my way up the gospel track. Yes, I'm on my way and I can't look back, 'cause I got my hand on the gospel plow. I'm bound to wear my heavenly crown. There's plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom, plenty good room, so choose your seat. Down I said I'm on my way up the gospel track. Yes, I'm on my way and I can't look back, 'cause I got my hand on the gospel plow. I'm bound to wear my heavenly crown. There's plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom, plenty good room, so choose your seat. Down I know there's plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom, plenty good room, plenty good room. There's room enough for you, and room enough for me. So choose your seat and sit on down.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, we'll call back into open session this meeting of the Arlington Independent School District for September 6th, beginning at 7:35 p.m. Thank you all for coming out, and special thanks to the Arlington High School Boys Chorale, HS Chamber Choir, and Dinah Menger. Thank you to them. Mr. Huff, thank you for coordinating. They were great. We will start the rest of the meeting, though, with the opening ceremony, and if you'll please join Mr. Hibbs in the pledge. If you'll do what I'm doing, which is silence your cell phone. Wow, this thing is way smarter than I am, that's for sure. And join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Well, we had a great program presentation. Takes us to appointments. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, I'd like to recommend the individuals discussed in closed session for Assistant Principal for Bailey Junior High School, Assistant Principal for Goodman Elementary.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hugg, second by Mrs. Sullins. Please vote. All 5 board members in the affirmative. The motion passes. Mr. Pompa is ill tonight, and Mrs. Pena cannot be with us. Thank you. Dr. Cavazos, tell us about them.
Thank you, President Barron. This time, I'd like to introduce the new Assistant Principal at Bailey Junior High School, Ms. Rona Peterman. Ms. Peterman attended Texas Wesleyan University for a Bachelor of Science, Education in Mathematics, and a Master of Education in Computer Literacy as well. She's taught technology. She's been a technology teacher since 1997 at Bailey Junior High, and has taught 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade in different capacities as a math teacher. Congratulations. Is there anyone you'd like to introduce or anything you'd like to say at this time?
Thank you so much. President Barron, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos, thank you so much for the opportunity to serve as Assistant Principal at Bailey Junior High. I truly feel blessed. I would like to introduce my family, who without them I am nothing. I really and truly appreciate their support. It's my husband, Brian, my son, Bryce, and I have some extended family here, Jerry Vandelman. I appreciate him coming also. I would like to recognize 3 individuals that have served as role models for me as effective leaders and have really shaped and molded what I want to be in this position. And the first would be Ms. Jane Fothery. And this is a former Arlington Independent School District employee who served as an administrator for very many years in this district. The second is Mr. Jimmy Walker. I really appreciate the time that I served under him and appreciate his guidance and support. And last but not least, Mrs. Tiffany Benavides. She is my inspiration, and she has inspired me, and she's the reason I'm standing up here tonight. Thank you so much. And last but not least, to my Bailey family, which is the best place on earth to work. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Am I lucky or what? I cannot wait to work with you and help you do the things that you also always are already doing so wonderfully, and that's to educate kids and inspire learners. Thank you.
At this time, it's my pleasure to present the new assistant principal at Goodman Elementary School, Ms. Cristina Hernandez. Cristina attended the University of Texas at Arlington, received her Bachelor in Social Work, and her Master of Education in Curriculum and Instruction from the University of Texas at Arlington as well. Cristina has been a math and science instructional facilitator from 2007 to the present at Goodman Elementary, has taught third grade bilingual and second grade bilingual at Goodman Elementary as well. Cristina, congratulations. Is there anything you'd like to say or anyone you'd like to introduce at this point?
Yes, President Barron, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos, I truly feel honored and privileged to be here today. And I do want to thank, first of all, I do want to dedicate this moment to my father, who can't be here with me tonight, who definitely was my mentor, my friend, and due to an accident 11 months ago, he's not here for that reason, and my mother, so this moment is for them. And again, I'm honored and I'm privileged to work with a wonderful staff at Goodman Elementary. Thank you. Thank you for your support. And I would have to say that Goodman's the best place on earth to work. And so I truly am honored. This is an awesome opportunity, and I want to thank the Goodman staff, the committee who have trusted, who have confidence in me, and I thank you for that. Thank you for allowing me that opportunity. There's a lot of people I want to thank, but I'll try to keep it short. I did grow up in Arlington, so I want to thank my former teachers at Rockmore Elementary, Nichols Junior High, Spear in a brief moment in my elementary career, and Lamar High School, and also Burton Adventist Academy. There are many teachers that have contributed to who I am today, and I thank them all. Many people along the way planted the seed, and I believe that they were part of that strategic plan without knowing, because they were, I can clearly recall Shannon Nix, who is an intern, I believe she was doing her internship as assistant principal at Nichols Junior High, who sat down with us with a group of body of students when we celebrated our first multicultural event at Nichols Junior High, and she said, remember where you're at today, do the best that you can, get educated, and come back and serve your community. And so that was there in my head, and I knew that I needed to come back and serve my community. And also, I want to thank the people, Sharon Jensen, Title I folks, for the opportunity to serve as an instructional coach for Arlington ISD. I truly believe that my experience with the instructional piece has prepared me to become an instructional leader. I want to thank them for all the opportunities that they gave me, the instructional specialist that I've had the opportunity, Renee Pope, who's always passionate about science, Donna Bullis. There's just a lot of people. Bettina Dixon with math department. There's a lot of people in Arlington who have influenced who I am today. And I can't forget about my administrative team, Miss Tara Albert, Mr. Kamwa, that I did see around here. I don't know if he's still here around. Mr. Kamwa, 10 years I've worked with him, and he's truly been a mentor and inspiration. And Miss Albert, who believed in me and planted that seed that I could become a leader, and she saw a lot of potential. And I can't say enough for Miss Elizondo as well, who I've had the honor of working with in the past 2 years. And she too has been a wonderful inspiration, has trusted me, has believed in me, and has also guided me. Thank you all. And it's going to be a great year. Thank you.
Christina, get the kids.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot my kids. Babies, I'm so sorry. And I want to thank my children, Jorge and Rosemary, and my sister, who's also a teacher in Arlington, who's out there by the door with my nephew, and my niece, with my mom, with my niece, Mariela. Obviously, without my family, without my children who have been my cheerleaders along the way, that's the other component, our family. Sorry, babies. Thank you.
At this time, I'd also like to recognize Evan Smith, and she's our Executive Director for Secondary Instruction. If you'd come up to the podium. Evan was previously approved by the board in June, but was out of town and could not join us. And it's taken us a little bit. We've had several of these, but we caught up. And so I want to make sure that we do the proper introduction and welcome to Evan Smith, even though she's hard at work every day already. So Evan comes to us from Pampa ISD. She's been a deputy superintendent, a principal at a high school, a principal at a middle school, curriculum coordinator, received her education in West Texas State University in music, and at West Texas A&M University in educational leadership. And Evan, congratulations again. I think when we appointed you, or the board appointed you, we had your picture from the website, so it's good to have you here. And so if there's anything you'd like to say or anybody you'd like to introduce, this is your time.
Well, President Barron and the board and Dr. Cavazos, I would like to introduce my husband, Dwayne, and my son, Stephen. And I want to make a couple other introductions, and I want to say a couple words. I also want to introduce in the audience two very, very important ladies in my life, and one is Joan Alvey, if you would stand. The other is Debbie Williams. And then I want to recognize this fabulous group of administrators that you guys have supporting you behind you there. And what I want to say, there has been many mentors in my life as well. But when I came to work here, I came running. Actually, the very first week, I've decided I'm always going to work the week of July 4th because it's kind of calm and there's not very many people around. And it gave me a chance to do a lot of reading that week. And from the next week on, we have just hit the road running. And I tell you what's exciting about being here. I mean, Goodman's a fabulous place. Bailey's a fabulous place. But you guys do not know how lucky you are to be in Arlington ISD, which is the best place around. And the vision that you guys have and the direction and the leadership that's going on now, it's coming together and it's an exciting time. And when you think about Premier, it's going to be Premier. You're going to have people flocking to come see what's going on our campuses and what's going on in this district. So I appreciate your leadership, your time, your focus, and I just want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be part of this great team.
Now, if the appointees will go with Ms. Evans out to the front, and everybody in the crowd will give us about a minute head start. The board's going to go out and do a very short receiving line, and we'll be right back in here to continue with our meeting. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back now, and it brings us to the open forum for agenda items. This is a routine part of the school board's agenda for regularly scheduled meetings, and this segment of the meeting provides citizens with an opportunity to share their views with trustees on items that are on the agenda tonight. It is not intended to be a discussion or a debate, and trustees will not reply to the speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at an individual will not be tolerated. Personnel matters are not appropriate subjects to the open forum. I have one card this evening from the audience, and would Mr. Derek Hyenga please come up to the mic? You'll have 5 minutes to speak. A lighted timer on the podium will assist you in pacing your presentation. A yellow light will illuminate when there is 1 minute left for you to complete your presentation, and when the red light comes on and the buzzer sounds, you're done. Good evening.
Good evening. President Barron, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos. I'm Derek Hyenga, Chief of Staff at UEA. Tonight I've come before you to celebrate. I want to talk about good things. As we look at Arlington ISD, my role on the staff is to oversee and to help and to build and to see that the teachers are taken care of, and that beyond that, that the students are taken care of. Tonight, we want to talk about the things that are going so very well right now. Things are moving in a direction that you guys have established, And the vibration out there in the community, the vibration with the teachers is strong and it's very good. Tonight you have a major budget item. It's going to cost $1 million. People keep asking us, are you going to oppose this? At the end of the day, we say, well, there's absolutely no way we can oppose this. We have to support this in everything we do. Austin has cut our funding to the bone. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You guys have had to make some very, very difficult decisions, and we understand that. Last year, you were faced with incredible choices on layoffs, and you guys fought back and made much less cut than anybody else, and the cuts that were made were painful and heartfelt. And we appreciate your passion, and we appreciate you fighting for every job you did. It was well done. The high school program, you made cuts to it. But then when people came back to you and said, we've got some unintended consequences, Dr. Cavazos, board, you listened and you said, okay, we can fix that. We don't have a lot of money to work with, but we can fix that. And you listened again. We've been in talks across the summer with the administration talking about some problem areas as teachers see it with class size, RTI, and the administration saying, we can fix that. The spirit is, we can fix that, and we appreciate that. As we go forward, I want you to look at some of the reasons to support what you're doing. One of the key parts of leadership, of organizational structure, is an idea called span of control. This is a ratio of workers to management. Now, a few years back, the legislature made draconian cuts and the state agencies went crazy because they were asked to move their agencies to one manager to 11 workers. And they cried it was impossible. It couldn't be done. As we go into other industries, banking has a manager ratio of 1 to 5. Nursing, you typically look at 1 manager to 12. The military, 1 to 6. Standard industry, you're looking at 1 worker to 15. Now I want you to think about what's happening in Arlington ISD. How many workers and how many leaders you have. Team, your leadership team is working day and night. They are working so hard. They're doing so much work, and they need some support. We support the idea of expanding their ranks. They need the help. Your district is pared to the bone, pared to the bone. And some folks want to say we don't need more management, but we are going to say yes, in fact, we do need this help. This is very important for your strategic plan, and we want it implemented, and we want to support you in this. As we look at this, we have some things we would like to say about the leaders you're about to select over the next few years. We want you to appoint leaders that will inspire our teachers. Oh, Lord. We want you to find leaders that will lift teachers up. We want you to find leaders that will lessen the workload. We want you to find leaders that will inspire the teachers and make them glad to come to work. At the end of the day, you're on the right track, and we want to throw our support behind you all the way. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Hyenga. And that was the only card for the open forum. Brings us to our action items. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, we'd like to have a presentation on our budget amendment, our strategic plan budget amendment. And so if, put it up there. And the board has received this information, and we had an entire work session that a large part of it was dedicated to this. So our presentation will be brief, and we're certainly going to be open to answer any questions. Our budget amendment this evening that we bring forward includes a one-time cost of $3.1 million. That has been, for one-time costs, recurring costs or new positions are $751,000. So the total budget amendment is $3.9 million. And so when you look at what the categories that those dollars represent, you'll see that payroll cost is $2 million, contracted 1.6, and you can see the rest down to 3.9 million. And so this budget amendment has been revised since we spoke at the budget work session or the board work session. And so September 6th, we presented, today we're presenting a $3.9 million budget amendment. August 16th, we presented a 5.1. So it's a difference of 1.2 million that we've reduced the budget amendment. And so there's reasons for that. As we progress through our strategic plan and further define the activities that we're going to complete, we've revised the action plans in year 1. And so adjustments for that work that will not be completed by June 30th have been then moved on to another fiscal year. And that's an entire budget process that the board will work with as you move into preparing for next year's budget. In terms of payroll, it's $2 million, 9 new positions. And again, the 9 new positions are not the $2 million, and we're going to talk about that. Extra duty and substitutes also is part of that payroll cost. And the extra duty is for research, staff development, and curriculum writing. So we do have contracted services, also $1.6 million. And part of that is a curriculum audit that's part of our strategic plan, a facilities assessment. And again, we've had discussion as the board, previous board meeting. Human resource consultant for a competitive compensation plan and the development of that. Surveys and staff development are examples of that contracted service. We do have supplies and materials, staff development materials, career technical higher education program materials, materials related to a positive working culture, customer service, and volunteer engagement. Other operating expenses to a total of about $50,000, and that's to do site visits and research instructional models. It's a very important part of our strategic plan, is to develop and research and then finally adopt an instructional model for our district. To research customer service models, parent engagement models, volunteer engagements, to look at best practices across the state and across the nation as well in these areas. We have a capital outlay of $50,000 budgeted in the amendment, and that's for facilities inventory software. I'm going to skip this slide and come back because I'm going to allow Ms. Powell the opportunity to explain this slide because it has a lot of numbers and she loves numbers. So we'll come back to that. Part of the discussion last board meeting was new positions. And I'd like to get a little deeper into the new position discussion and remind everyone that the budget that we're proposing is a starting point, the budget amendment. And we're going to evaluate this as we move forward. And additional positions we're going to be bringing back to the board for consideration. So there's a phase 1 and then future considerations based on the strategic plan and how the implementation is actually going throughout the year. So the new positions that we're recommending, there's a total of 9 for this phase 1, if you will. And we're recommending, as we did last board meeting, 3 area superintendents, 2 secretaries to support those 3 positions, a director of parent and community engagement, a secretary to support that position, a specialist for student discipline and accountability and testing programmer. And again, these positions are phase 1 and we feel are critical to the implementation of the strategic plan currently. And we do have a risk manager position that will be repurposed as a budget specialist, and that's important to note. As we implement the plan, and again, putting forward all the new positions that we're thinking about, but these positions in this category are as we implement the plan, and they may change. In fact, I anticipate they will. But we're putting them forward so that we have that discussion now, and that's a director of curriculum development, compliance, and delivery, director of planning and professional development, facility planning and construction, personnel, and secretaries to support those positions. A specialist for safety, a community and internal communication specialist, and a senior program evaluator, for a total of 10 positions. But I have to emphasize again that these positions will be brought back for board consideration as we implement the strategic plan. It's our best forecast, if you will, right now. But as you live and you implement the strategic plan and you get some of this feedback returned to the district, such as a curriculum audit, then it's important to use that information as we expect campuses to use the data that they have, that we use the information to make adjustments where appropriate. And so the area superintendent, and this, you have this information as well, in general will be responsible for the management, direction, supervision, and evaluation of the schools assigned in their area. They will be supervising the principals in their adherence to instructional standards, curriculum assessments, accountability measures, monitoring appropriate school and classroom learning environments, the selection and development and the evaluation of school-based leaders. And I think an important word there is development. These individuals will be involved in principal coaching and leadership coaching for the areas that they supervise. And you see the major responsibilities and duties. Those are bulleted items that mirror the job description of a principal. And so we've done some research in terms of, because this was a question came up in the last work session, we've done research of districts across the state and in some cases out of the state and their organizational structure. And I'm not going to go through each one of those because you have that material and you've had it now for a good bit of time. But we looked at the big school districts in Texas. And if you'll notice that elementary, middle, and high school, that every district has an organizational structure that has a direct support for principals and in their structure, and they've had that for a number of years. I'll use Aldine as an example. They have 4 area superintendents, and they're by network, and so they cover different networks and different spans of schools. Aldine in particular has had this model for a good amount of time. ALEAF, Austin ISD, they're organized with a model of supporting principals as well. 2 things stand out with this slide. One is the organization of networks and schools by network or feeder patterns, and then the organization of schools by level, elementary, secondary, or elementary, junior high, and high school. And so the model we're proposing is by level, that we have an area superintendent for secondary schools, and then 2 area superintendents for elementary schools because of the number of elementary schools that we have in our district. And so it's about half and half, a split, if you will, in terms of how they're organized. When visiting with some of the superintendents, as I reached out to them, you know, in some cases when they started off as networks and feeder patterns, they experienced what we're experiencing in terms of some of our clusters, and our clusters are becoming very large, and Sam Houston is an example. So what they've done is they've taken schools and balanced that over the area superintendents, and so you lose the network and the feeder that you were trying to establish. The schools that I visited with that have the by level, secondary and elementary, felt that was strong in terms of implementing accountability at those levels, and you have a consistent theme across horizontally. So we looked at other districts, and again, the size, and the point again is that they each have a structure that supports principals that helps them in their leadership development. We looked at Charlotte-Mecklenburg, which is a Broad Prize. We looked at Cincinnati, which is a high-performing urban district, and Albuquerque in Oklahoma too. And in visiting with some of those superintendents, their focus is always on providing the support for the campuses and having that direct channel. These individuals are on site at the campuses supporting principals. So in looking at, and I know that that's very hard to read, in fact it's probably impossible to read, but the board members, do you have that information? And Mark, if you want to use the document camera, that would be good. And what you see is the board asked, I think last time, for a organizational chart and how this would actually fit in our school district. And really the point to be made here is that the principals would report to the area superintendents. Mark, let's make sure you have the right one. That's not the right one.
Okay. This is the one Steven sent.
Here, you can have this one. And then I don't have one, but.
No, it's the same one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So if you zoom out a little bit, Mark, that would help. I know then it's going to get hard to see, but the point to be made here, and I'll use my laser pointer here, is that the principals will report to those area superintendents by level, and then those area superintendents would then report to me, the interim superintendent, and to keep that very good alignment in terms of principal support. And so that structure is the one we're proposing. You see the accountability, and you can zoom into this one, Mark. accountability and testing would report to our Director of Testing, which is Dr. Carter. And then we have specialist, or I'll go the other way, the Director of Parent and Community Engagement. You can zoom into that. And then that budget specialist, but the Director of Parent and Community Engagement would report to the Deputy Superintendent at this point. And then the budget specialist would report to the Director of Budget in our system. So again, this is phase one, and looking at the kind of the big point here is that the principals would have a direct supervisor of area superintendents. We'll go to the slide now, Mark. All right, so it's important to discuss our next steps with our strategic plan. We're going to continue to develop our action plans with our external consultant. The board will consider metrics or measures for a strategic plan, which are going to be very comprehensive, hopefully in the September 20th board meeting or board work session. And we'll have RFQs for a curriculum audit, facilities assessment, and human resource consultant. And then we anticipate that the first quarterly report will be in November. Back to the board and to the public, and it'll be on our website and things like that. And time does fly, so it's moving quickly. At this point, you don't have to look at the screen because it'll drive you crazy, but at this point I'm going to go back to the multi-year forecast and ask Ms. Powell to briefly take us through that slide.
Sure. At the last meeting, we were asked to bring back this multi-year forecast with, he's pointing at Mrs. Solins. But we were asked to bring back the multi-year forecast updated for the impact of this budget amendment. We've done that here. So very quickly, I'll point out that on the revenue line, we've added in $2.5 million for each year, beginning with the column that's labeled amended 12-13 budget. For each year on out, $2.5 million for the additional revenue that we will be generating from our higher property values we talked about in August when we adopted the tax rate. That budget change is actually also on this agenda as part of the consent agenda this evening. On the expenditure line, in the column again for the 12-13 year, we have added in there $751,000 for the recurring costs, the personnel, the 9 personnel units we are requesting. That same amount carries across on the future columns. Also, though, in the 12-13 year as expenditures, we've added $3.1 million for those non-recurring costs that we presented to you this evening. So the net effect of those changes for the 12-13 year would result in a deficit, a budget deficit of $1.3 million. I'll also point out on here that we have maintained in that green bar in the middle a projection, an assumption, if you will, for the next 3 years for a potential additional loss in state aid. We have no idea that that might be coming, but we have built this into all of our models since the spring in an effort to be very conservative on our projections. The one other thing I will point out is that for the years 2013, 14, and beyond, in each one of those years, there's about $2.5 million of capital outlay. And that was an addition to this forecast that we were asked to make this summer to demonstrate an ongoing investment in capital needs. For the last several years, we've been paying for those things largely out of construction funds. So I think we've got a conservative projection here, and I think we built in the impact of this budget amendment. So.
And this time we'll answer any questions about the presentation.
Mr. Hibbs, you're first.
Thank you, President Barron. Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Ms. Powell, thank you guys for your presentations. We're going to be voting on 2 things tonight that I'm just extremely passionate. If I don't make any other votes this year, I'll go on record. If I don't make any other votes this year, it's going to be these 2 items. One is with the strategic plan budget amendment, and the other is overcrowding. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. But with this one, this board has worked very hard over the course of last year moving forward with the strategic plan. We have worked very closely with the administration, and I believe that we have set the direction. we've set the direction of what we expect this district to look like in 3 years. And it's not all going to be done overnight, but one of the most glaring things I think that we saw in any one of our workshops was that we are lean, especially when it comes to the top administrators and the top administration. There is just no way, even with all your qualifications, Dr. Cavazos, is that you effectively lead 74 campuses and know everything that's happening on those campuses at any one time. I look at the 17 comparable or largest districts across the state of Texas, and there's not one without area superintendent. So the only glaring hole there is the Arlington Independent School District. When I look at some of the other districts across the country, and I have done some independent research, it's a constant theme. So as we're getting and looking towards voting on this tonight, I would encourage my fellow board members, because I know that you share the same passion to move this district forward, that we go and move on the strategic plan budget amendment, and I would like to put that in a motion. Since it is an action item. Appropriate. So I would a motion that we accept the strategic plan budget amendment, and at this point I will say as stated, and if anyone needs to amend, we can discuss that.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hibbs, second by Mrs. Sullins. Further discussion. Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. I pretty much echo what Mr. Hibbs just stated. I'm very excited that we're able to get this ball moving forward in the positive direction that we all want to see it go. I have a couple of questions for just clarification and curiosity on the, Dr. Cavazos, the comparison districts for the job descriptions, specifically with the area superintendents. You mentioned Ohio and Charlotte-Mecklenburg as far as high-performing districts. Did you look, was that considered a major component, or was it just the size of districts? I'm specifically interested in looking at districts that are high-performing, perhaps that also have been successful implementing an MPE model. And I just, the information that we received was a lot, but there wasn't necessarily a methodology summarization for us. So I just, if you could expand on that a little bit.
Absolutely. When we look at the districts that we picked by size, and then also identified the broad prize winning districts, Aldine, Brownsville, Houston, and Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And in speaking with the chief of schools in Austin ISD as an example, they're implementing performance empowerment model. And so they have been, this is I think their third year in implementing that. And they feel that this structure is the one that is driving a lot of that implementation. Because as schools improve, and you have to have frequent monitoring and knowledge of that improvement and data analysis, they receive then more autonomy. And so they're building that system that we're going to build with MPE. And so in order to build that autonomy and have those appropriate indicators, you have to have closer oversight and closer frequent contact with the principals. And so, yes, that was one consideration. I spoke with the now recently retired chief academic officer in Houston, and they had they have a similar structure in terms of support for principals. And that's one of their big drivers, is that as campuses and their work is recognized in terms of needing some improvement, that these are the individuals that drive that improvement, and they broker that system of central office to make sure the resources are there, and not a year later or 8 months later, but weeks later, I mean, in a very frequent manner. And so these are best practices, models that I've looked at and we've looked at as a team. I did include principals in some of this discussion and this research and review, because ultimately it's to support the principals as well and make sure that they're supported in their needs. And so we discussed the different research and the background and things like that, and so that's how we came to our recommendation.
And the area superintendent as the title versus an executive director seem to still gravitate, I guess, to the top, just as it did last time in your presentation.
That's correct. And as we looked at other districts, that seems to be the position or the title that resonates more with the type of system that we're building. And also, one thing that's not noted in here, and not make a big point about it, but a lot of these districts, these positions, these area superintendents or associate superintendents, they then have directors and other people that support them. And that's not the model that we're recommending. We're just recommending the area superintendents at this point.
Okay. The other question that I had on the change in dollars from last time to this time, that 1.2 or so million dollars change, I couldn't find clearly where those items were listed on some of the tables that we were provided, or I didn't understand what I was looking at, perhaps. I was just wondering if you could give us a summation. I was looking through the slides, and I know there was just some minor changes in titles or words. For example, under other operating expenses, under supplies and materials, currently you've called it parent and volunteer engagement programs. Last time it was parent and community engagement programs. So I don't know if that's where some of the dollars are changing, but if you could give us a little bit of guidance on that.
Sure. You have in your packet a document that's redlined, and that gives you the specific changes from the previous board meeting to today.
Okay.
And very specifically, and I thank Ms. Powell for doing this work. This is very detailed and tedious, but basically what we presented in that board work session, Cindy has redlined every single area that has been changed so that you see what the difference is from the last one. One big example is the staff development, and knowing that some of our staff development will occur into next July and August and September. And so in terms of budget preparation and amendment, we don't reflect that because that's next year's budget. And that's a whole budget cycle that the board will obviously be very involved in and have an opportunity to discuss. So that's one of the big ones, was the staff development. Cindy, you want to go through a few more?
Sure, and Dr. Cavazos is right. On payroll, that is the big difference. It was, as we worked with the consultant, we tightened up the action plans. We said, okay, what will be finished by June 30th and what will not? And so on payroll, that staff development, that curriculum writing work that will not be completed June 30th falls into next fiscal year. So that has been reduced out of the payroll budget. For contracted services, the primary thing is we have adjusted some of the services we were contracting for development of a customer service program and a teacher ambassador program and a follow-up survey on customer improvement model. The work this next year will focus primarily on developing those programs, and so we felt like, again, by June 30th, those other items would not be done, so we pulled those back. On supplies and materials, the big adjustment, again, is related to that summer staff development and curriculum writing work. Again, because we will not be finished with all of that June 30th, there are materials associated with that training that we have removed out of the budget amendment. And then on the other operating expenses, it's primarily, again, related to, in this case, a volunteer program and some money that we had in the original budget for volunteer recognition program. And again, in this first year, we will spend most of our time and effort developing the program. And so as of June 30th, we did not anticipate having yet that volunteer recognition program, or had not completed a definition of what that needed to look like, so we've removed that. There was no change then on the capital outlay piece.
Okay. And I guess the question that I have with backing those things up, are we at risk or at jeopardy of backing up the whole plan? Or do you think you can adjust and still accomplish what is already listed as year 2 with these additional things that have been rolled towards year 2?
I think the latter is correct. We will be able to accomplish that by rolling in things into year 2. The two big pieces that are happening kind of in the background of all this is developing our measures and what we're going to measure to determine our progress with our strategic plan, and then the action plans for each one of these year 1 strategies. And so those are the things that are coming September 20th.
Okay, and I see a lot of the red line is defining world-class facilities, and of it, the 10-year facilities master plan, those types of things. I would assume then they're going to be pretty much on the front end then of that year too.
On that particular one, that
Yeah.
particular strategy, we basically redefined within the action plan those individual steps. There's no change in the dollars on the entire facility assessment
Okay.
process. I think if you look in that red line document, we took out everything, all the wording and the dollars that had been there the first time and restated them down below, and they're defined a little more specifically in the revised action plans, and so the dollars on that one have not changed. The intent has not changed. We just further defined them.
Okay, okay. And let's see, under effective leadership, the measurement tool for teacher effectiveness that positively impacts student learning, I see you have the note that it was combined with 3.1 under the recommendation of the consultant. So all of those types of things, I guess, we'll really get into on hopefully at the September 20th meeting so that we're clear on all the action items and where we are going to fall as far as timeline.
That is correct.
Okay,
September
good.
20th, we'll have much more discussion about that.
Okay. And I believe the other question that I have, this would be for Ms. Powell on the 5-year projection. If we could put that slide back up. I was just wanting to get clarification again on the 1.3 million deficit for 12-13 that's listed there. You said that was by and large from one-time cost?
Right.
So it would be not necessarily something that we would show in our budget as a deficit if we enacted to have that one-time cost allocated out of our fund balance versus the general operating budget, is that correct?
And this has that effect that you've just described, as we recognize the expenditures that we anticipate incurring, the revenues we anticipate receiving. The net effect of that is 1.3 million, which will come out of the fund balance. So it's an acknowledgement that the board is choosing very deliberately to use fund balance for expenditures.
Okay. Okay. I'll have to process that a little bit. I just think of us with the balanced budget policy and that type of thing, if we're veering off or not, or if there's other things that we're going to have to do to try to correct that. But I know Ms. Owens is going to be talking about that as well. So, I don't know.
No, I just point out we have many millions in there also. It's just an assumption on what the cuts might be.
That's right.
And so there's no guarantee of a deficit at all.
That's true. That's true.
Could be a surplus.
Hey, let's hope. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to having this essential piece moving forward. I think it'll be great to get the strategic plan moving, get our MPE model implemented, and next time, hopefully, or soon thereafter, to actually approve our theory of action for change in our MPE policy and that type of thing. Thank you very much.
Please vote. All voting in the affirmative, the motion passes. We have a budget amendment. And I guess, Dr. Cavazos, while we're here, and I see 3 teacher organizations out there, and one of the items on here is we're hiring a specialist to talk about the competitive pay, competitive compensation plan, right?
That's correct.
So I would encourage us to solicit input from the teacher associations, because it's going to impact them a little bit.
Absolutely. That's part of the environment we're trying to create is a collaborative environment, and we would get input from different groups, the organizations specifically, but also our other teachers and principals, et cetera.
And this plan would go beyond teachers to the whole staff, is that right?
That's correct. This plan is designed so that it expands to the entire staff. But it starts with classroom teachers as a model. And so a lot of work and research has been done on this in other districts and throughout the state and nation, and so we would use that information as well.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the list is changes to FDA local, the district transfer policy process.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. And at this point, the only thing we had to bring back in terms of this item was the charge of the boundary committee. And so you have that information. We're open. I'm sorry, I'm the wrong one. I went too fast. I thought that was somebody else coming down. The transfer process, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you. President Perrin, Dr. Cavazos, and members of the board, at the last board meeting, we discussed some changes to district transfer process. I just real quickly want to go over those recommendations, and will be available to answer questions. The recommendations are the same as what we discussed at the last meeting. The first is that a student who currently resides in the district but then moves out, but still lives in the city of Arlington, we would allow that student to remain in the district in attendance on a tuition-free basis. That will require a change in policy, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. A student who is a resident of the district who changes attendance zones during the school year would be allowed to stay at their original school for the remainder of the school year without paying a fee. A non-resident student who does not currently live in the school district but lives in the city of Arlington and wants to attend one of our schools could request a transfer on a tuition-free basis, and they would be assigned a higher priority than those people who were not city of Arlington students. Those priorities for students who are on the waiting list: first, we would deal with in-district transfer requests; second, out-of-district employee requests; third, out-of-district but city of Arlington residence requests; and then finally, fourth would be all other out-of-district, out-of-city requests. Two additional recommendations was that after the start of the school, campuses that had been closed would be reevaluated and potentially reopened based on actual enrollment and staffing, and that building capacities needed to be recalculated, and we would do that as a part of the facilities assessment. In your packet, you do have a copy of the board policy that needs to be updated, and it has to do with change of residence for those students who are who move out of the district but still are in the city, that they would be allowed to remain in the school district at no tuition. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. I think that addresses everything that we spoke of last time. Does the change in the policy allow the city of Arlington residents who are not in the school district, does it address them?
Yes. I'm sorry, say it again. The ones who are city of
Arlington, but not
outside,
AISD.
They already are addressed in the policy, because that really was not a change. It's just that they've been given a different priority. So it was not a policy change, it's a procedural change.
Okay. Mr. Hugg.
Thank you, President Barron, and I will make a motion at the end of my comments. Just one quick question to Mr. Harvey. First off, I think this is a great idea. I think it's a great idea to move more towards school choice. We've had more choice in our district, and I think it's worked well for us on many elements. We have a lot of transfers for different reasons of why someone transfers. So I think it's a great thing, and it's only ever expanding. I consider us to constantly look at it from a public school perspective of how we offer parents choice within a district. One question I do have on this, Mr. Harvey, of how it's listed, and maybe I'm just not looking at this little bit of the policy. It says, I don't see anywhere where it says if a child's not achieving, is it discipline a problem or not achieving the certain standards?
Yes.
I just want to confirm that's listed
Within
there.
procedure, when we're talking about out-of-district request for transfer, the out-of-district transfers, and this is the information up here, are grounded if they have 95% attendance in their previous district, are passing grades in all their classes, and they have passed tax.
Okay.
And then they do have to continue to maintain disciplinary achievement.
That's perfect. That's all I have. And with that, I'd make a motion to accept transfer request as changed by the administration.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hugg, second by Mr. Hibbs. Any further discussion? Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. I two quick things. One, I want to make sure that on the recommendations, the procedural recommendations as far as a student who changes attendance zones shall continue at that school the rest of the year without paying a fee. Regarding transportation, however, that will be on that family's onus, right?
Correct.
Their responsibility.
That's correct.
Okay, and I don't know if that's an added line that we should maybe include when we post this on the website, just to make it crystal clear that that is a consideration. And then the other thing that I'd recommend as far as adding to this policy is that the board, when we go through the annual review of the district transfer process or policy, that we just have that included in the policy, that is a function of the board, that's what we do, just to make sure that the procedure regulations are something that we have our eyes on, seeing this is so specific as far as priorities and that type of thing. So that's it.
Please vote. Mr. Hibbs, are you out there?
Oh, I did.
Thank you. 5-0, the motion passes. We have a new transfer policy. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consider the charge to the Boundary Committee for the Sherry Street Elementary School, Atherton Elementary, Hale Elementary, and Johns Elementary, redrawing of the lines to accommodate the new Sherry Street School. And we got a look at the Boundary Committee charge last time. Is there any discussion on the charge, or can we go ahead with this?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Reich, second by Mrs. Sullins to approve the proposed boundary process for Atherton, Hale, Johns, and Sherry Street Elementary. Please vote. Five oh. Mr. Walker, they have a charge? Thank you. Dr. Cavazos, next.
Thank you, President Barron. The next item is to consider a solution to relieve overcrowding in East Arlington. We had discussion at the last board meeting about this. And so in general, our recommendation is to construct 2 new elementaries in East Arlington and to have 3 building additions. And we've discussed different options, and this is the one that is optimal at this point. And we were open to any questions.
President Barron, can I just make a motion on this one?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. I agree with you, Mr. Hibbs. This is something we've talked about with East Arlington overcrowding and overcrowding in general for a long period of time, starting with the Bond Advisory Committee when we both met. I'm pleased to make a motion this evening that we proceed with the 2 elementary schools as proposed by the administration.
Second.
Anything else? Sorry, 3. Yeah, sorry, 3. Yes. Oh, and the 3 building additions. 2 new elementary schools and 3 building additions.
Did you second? Okay. Motion by Mrs. Sullins, second by Mr. Hibbs. Discussion, Dr. Reich.
Just to be clear, what we are motioning on is to give our administration the direction that we are in support and agreement of going forth to investigate the true costs associated with it and the architectural design, if it's possible, for those 2 schools and the 3 additions at those specific schools. Right. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands we're not actually approving the dollars, the funds, or anything like that at this point, but we do need to move forward with that. I have one question on this design. Previously, with our 09 bond, we had 2 elementary additions at 400 students capacity each, I believe, for those additions. Now we're looking at 3 different campuses, 200 capacity. I think I already know the answer, but this was, I believe, through research, a much better model to truly help relieve the overcrowding versus what originally we had looked at with that bond, right?
Absolutely. There were 2
Good.
building additions included with the original planning on the 2009 bond package. We believe we need to spread those to 3 different campuses to provide relief for a greater area.
Good. And also, as chair of the CBOC liaison, board liaison committee, just to make note, seeing it wasn't, we didn't have the formal presentation, that our CBOC did have their eyes on this, and they did support this. It wasn't unanimous, but I think it was 7-2 with 1 abstention. So just for the record, to put that out there. Thank you very much.
Ms. Powell, just stay there for a second.
I'm sorry.
And we should point out that the building of these buildings, the new schools and the additions, will not completely remove all the temporaries, but it'll sure take care of most of them.
Right, and what this will do is get regular classes out of temporary buildings. There may still be some places where schools choose to use temporary buildings for some pull-out kind of activities, whether it's a family school rep or diagnostician or speech or art or music and strings, that sort of thing. But this would certainly get all the regular classes out of temps.
Okay. And at some point, there'll be a significant redrawing of lines
Yes.
in East Arlington?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no further discussion, please vote. All present voting in the affirmative. Dr. Cavazos, you have direction on pursuing 2 new schools and 3 additions.
Yes, sir, we do.
We are anxious to find out where they'll be and which schools will be selected for additions. Okay, that brings us up to the Student Leadership Advisory Board, and I'll call on Mr. Hogg to speak briefly about this.
Perfect. Thank you, President Barron. I know this was thoroughly discussed at the work session last time. Plain and simple, this is a committee that we have formed. It's a student and myself and some other board members came up with the concept and started working on this. And one of the things that drove this was during our strategic planning session, we had a huge amount of student input. And it was one of the best things I think everyone grabs. And most of the board members up here, we all have connections and kids we know in the schools. We thought, how do we make it a more formal process? And so we started really looking at this idea, and we'd been discussing it. And then one young student, outstanding student, came up and said, how do we really drive this? She had some ideas on this, and next thing we know, we're about to form a committee on this. So what it is what we'll have is each year we'll have a student leader advisory board. The board will be consisting of 6 junior, and the juniors will be the senior class presidents excuse me, thank you, Mr. Barron. It will be the junior class presidents that will be elected by their peers, and so they will be the representatives, 1 from each network of our 6 high schools that will come up. From that group, they will then elect 1 person to serve as the president for the next year. So each year it will be 6 juniors, 1 from each network, and then 1 at-large senior that will create some consistency on that committee. Each one of those members will then be assigned to each one of the school board members, so we have a direct liaison to those students. Those students will then work throughout their entire network to help represent the student's voice on that entire process, from certain things of holding town hall meetings to working with the elementary students who help them volunteer. Anything that coordinates with that network, it really makes a good sense. Also gives the students, we get a really much more deeper relationship with the students, and if we have student input, we're going to go directly to that student and say, hey, what do you think the students would think about this? And it works well, since we are elected officials, we thought, why not make it students that are elected officials by their peers? And it's a perfect mold. Through that, each year then, the board president will assign 1 of the board members to be the representative to oversee that, and then we're looking at, I think, the deputy superintendent to be the representative from staff, so that we don't have it fully on the board president and the superintendent to work through that. And we have this, and most of it's all in writing, they'll sit on the audience over to the side. We'll figure out ways through legal of how we can do that, because we do have to adhere to the Texas Open Meetings Act constantly through the whole thing. But they are there for an advisory role position. So with that, I would also like to, before I make the motion, say that in discussions, one of the students that helped us, she's a second-year student body president. She'll be the student body president at Bowie High School again. She comes very highly recommended, and so I would also, when I will make the motion, I will be making the motion to have Rebecca Leppert be our first president and serving on that. Rebecca, if you would just come up here real fast to the podium, real fast. As you can see, we've got a lot to cover tonight, Rebecca. But luckily, during the work session, you were here last time, and was a brief discussion on that. Just real quick, Rebecca, introduce yourself and any thoughts on this committee that you see.
Well, I'm Rebecca Leppert, and as you said, I'm the second year student body president at Bowie High School. And when I first started working on this plan, I didn't really know much about it. I emailed Mr. Hogg. I was like, yeah, I love being a student input. I love being a voice for the students, and I loved going to the first meeting about our strategic plan. And I was like, is there any way that I could help, be a voice for the students, intern, anything to get, more involved with the district? And he was like, well, you got perfect timing, because I've got this plan, and we kind of worked on it from there. And I personally feel very passionate about it. It's one of the great things that is going to happen this year, and I really look forward to working with all the different schools in the district, our feeder schools, our elementary schools, and it's going to be a great year. And I feel very, very strongly about getting this board up and running, and I hope you guys will agree too.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I think I'll speak on, watching you at our strategic plan meetings and then interacting. You're what the AISD is trying to create. So I thank you for that. And I will warn you that anytime the first year of a committee, there's a lot of kinks to always work out. Yeah. So just be prepared. We're going to have some kinks. It may not always go real smoothly, but we're getting student input, and that's a good thing. So with that, I make a motion to accept as recommended the Student Leader Advisory Board with Rebecca Leppert as our first president.
All right, now we didn't vote yet.
We need a second?
I need a second from
there you go.
Mr. Hibbs. Thank you. Dr. Rice, you want to say something?
A couple of things. One, I recommend maybe calling this Student Leadership Advisory Committee versus Board. That it might send some different signals. Slack versus slab. Neither one is great. If everybody's okay with it, it just seems that there might be some level of confusion as far as what board they're talking about.
If you wouldn't mind, just say, I would propose, let's just make it a Student Leader Advisory Board, and if the committee decides that they need a new name, that would be one of the first things I would propose to the committee of students and with the rest of the board. I would say let's empower the students and say they either going to like the name or they're going to hate the name, and then we can always change the name at any time when it's brought back up.
Well, I'm all for student empowerment. I have no problem with that. I just think for us to eliminate confusion, it might be something worth considering, but I'm fine with letting the students look at it. One of the things that I want to make sure of, one of the responsibilities is that the SLAB will be responsible for delivering and coordinating all student input from the district, including ideas of their own and each individual school network. That in and of itself is a lot of responsibility for that one representative. And in concert with our strategic plan and developing leadership, this is definitely one piece of it. I propose that through the trial and error with this first year that the students perhaps work with somebody in administration to have some baseline leadership training for those individuals and how they can work on communicating and soliciting input, maybe with our communications person, whoever that may be, and then throughout that first year let those students really develop the process and pretty much, I would say, like a leadership manual for those new people coming in, so that all this trial and error is documented and the best practice they can kind of establish. But to stick with the strategic plan, I think it would be very good for us to provide some type of training from the district for them to be successful at this.
And that is one of the reasons, Dr. Reich, that we feel there has to be at least one person that creates consistency over year over year. So you'll have that person that was on the committee the year before, and then one person will be elected as the president of that group for the next year. There'll also be consistency because the kind of discussion is 1 month they'll do an hour meeting with the board. We'll each have one assigned, so you'll be able to give as much leadership input to your student as you'd like, each board member. They'll also have a senior staff member, so the month they don't meet with us, they may have a meeting with Dr. Cavazos or someone from senior staff to really, so staff can also have a group of students to get input from. So I think it's definitely going to go that way. Through that this year, I know Rebecca, and one of the things, we just had to create some provisional guidelines of where we see them going. So it's definitely a working document. I think those are fair items. Hey, here's what we kind of look, but it's one where I believe it's student driven. So I want to see what the students want to do, and let's find out how we want to do it from that perspective.
I'm a huge proponent of that, and I would just say I look forward to the announcement and that formation happening as early as tomorrow. I know these guys are excited for it. I'll let you know that I have already spoken with the junior class president, Lamar, just because I know him. I mentioned it to him almost in passing, and he stopped me like hitting a brick wall and said, what is this about? He was so excited about this and so thankful that we are moving in this direction. So it's excellent to do. Thanks, Rebecca.
Please vote. Congratulations, Rebecca. You're the president of the Student Leadership Advisory Board / Council thing.
And I told you we'd be done at 9, didn't I? Fine, hey.
Feel free to go home and do your homework. All right, the next item on the agenda is consider revising the board meeting calendar. We have a copy of that. Oh, I did skip that. Okay. And this is action item F. For the board to consider and take possible action regarding a closed session discussion regarding student and the consultation with the board's attorney relating to potential pending litigation and mediation. I move to approve the agreement as discussed with counsel in closed session.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barron, seconded by Mr. Hogg. There will be no discussion. Please vote. All voting in the affirmative, the motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we're discussion action A, consider changes to BDB board internal organization, internal committees.
Thank you, President Barron. As chair of the audit committee, our audit committee helped put together, along with Mr. Edwards, our auditor, new board policies. This was sent out to the entire board. Recommendations were made on 2 changes. We made those and corrected those changes, thought they were good ideas. And so it's been, we have the final document that we are ready to approve. Our local BDB local board internal organization, internal committees, and this is coming from committee, so it doesn't need a second, Mr. Barron.
Any discussion on BDB local? Please vote. All present voting in the affirmative. BDB local is updated. Thank you. Next is revising the board meeting calendar. It's in the book. Okay. What page? 19. The revision to the board meeting calendar keeps the same dates as were previously published. It changes the second meeting of any month to a work session. We started this last month, and we think it's pretty successful, so we'll continue to give it a whirl on this. The first meeting will be a full business meeting with presentations and appointments, and the second meeting in action items, and the second meeting will just be discussion. It'll be a work session with no open forum. Okay? So if you're going to speak, come to the first meeting of the month. And I will move that we accept the new calendar.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Barron, second by Mrs. Sullins to accept the new calendar. Any discussion? Please vote. All in the affirmative, the motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next is to consider the contract for UTA College Park Center. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, we'd like to have a presentation about our UTA contract for graduation and in relation to our schools graduating there, and in particular Martin High School and their graduating and the location for their graduation in relation to the size of the school and the complexity of the program, but also the size of the facility at UTA. This time, Mr. Harvey, present about the graduation.
Thank you, President Barron, Dr. Cavazos, and members of the board. As Dr. Cavazos said, we'll talk tonight about the venue for graduation for June of 2013. A few considerations before we get to recommendations. During 2012, graduations, all of the campuses except for Martin High School used the UTA College Park facility for the first time. Martin High School continued to use TCU's Daniel Meyer. At the UTA facility, each campus was allowed 7 tickets for each graduate. Martin High School allocated 8. Additional tickets that were available were on a first-come, first-served basis for students. And each campus had the opportunity to create whatever unique program they wanted with their choirs and their bands and their orchestras. They each take great pride in the performances that take place during those celebrations. The ceremonies and traditions, again, are unique at each campus, and it's something that's been built over time, and that I think families have kind of grown to expect as they come to those graduations. UTA and TCU both have great facilities and have great staff to work with. However, the floor and space, seating space at Daniel Meyer is larger than what we have available to us at UTA's College Park. Some numbers from the senior class of the May of 2012. Bowie High School, which was 697 graduates, was the largest senior class that we had at UTA, but Martin is a larger class by about 113, which would translate to about 800 additional guests if you were looking at 7 guests for each of those additional students. The facilities themselves, UTA College Park has seating for 6,263 guests, and that's where the 7 tickets comes from. TCU Daniel Meyer, however, is larger at 6,729, and that allows the 8 per graduate. Parking is not really an issue at either facility. They both have ample parking at UTA. Graduation takes place during the break at UTA, and so parking has not been a problem. Some of the implications if Martin High School were to be at UTA, first of all, floor space really is a problem. They have such a large class that it leaves very little space for them to have the band, choir, orchestra that they're used to having. And in addition, their choir could not have risers on the floor like they have had at the Daniel Meyer facility. There would be a restriction to the floor space for the processional. And one of the things that's unique about Martin High School's processional is the way that they come in. They have a very well-orchestrated processional that could not take place at the UTA facility because space just is not available on the floor for that. And there are fewer audience seats available. This is a drawing of what the floor would look like if Martin High School were at the UTA College Park, and you can see the graduate seating goes all the way to the very back of the floor, and there's very little space then left for choir, band, and orchestra. Financial considerations, we pay College Park for this upcoming year will be $14,750, just slightly more than it was last year, and that's the cost per campus. TCU, Daniel Myers is a little less at $11,000, so for a little less money, we're actually getting a larger facility that accommodates Martin High School. And just for comparison, the Verizon, where we had graduations prior to the UTA facility opening, we paid $22,000 per campus. The UTA, I have to say, the UTA staff has been great to work with. They have been very available to us and answered all of our questions. They've come out and met with us, and we've been able to go to their facility. But they are concerned about the size of the floor in relation to the graduating class at Martin High School. It's very important to them that they have a positive experience for the people coming into that facility, and they were very clear that they were not just looking to get more business, but that it had to be a positive experience because they wanted people to walk away thinking well of that facility. But UTA is ready to proceed with a contract because we need to lock in the dates for graduation. Some comments from TCU as we talked to them, that they have great demand for their facility related to graduation, and they feel that if Martin High School does not reserve Daniel Meyer, that it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to ever get back into the rotation because they have a big waiting list of schools who would like to use that facility. And they are ready to also proceed with the contract once a decision's made. So the recommendation at this time is that the 5 graduation ceremonies at UTA continue to be at UTA, but that Martin High School graduation continue to be at TCU and not move to UTA. And if that's the case, this is the schedule that would be used for graduation for this upcoming 2013 class. And with that, I'll answer questions that you may have.
Mr. Harvey, this year, the graduation that we just went through, did the UTA ask us not to have Martin come there because they were afraid of the size of the school?
In this past year, no. We made the decision, since it was a new facility, and as we were planning, they actually were building that facility and they were unsure exactly what the final capacity was going to be. So based on that information, we chose not to move Martin High School for that year and just went with the 5 schools.
Okay. Financially, it seems like it would be cheaper for us to send everybody to TCU. Is that in the ballpark?
Well, it is cheaper, but it is not possible for us to get Daniel Meyer Coliseum reserved for our other 5 campuses.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hibbs.
Mr. Harvey, I asked that question last year, and they actually did say that the UTA was asking us not to bring it in the first year. So I think that may be the answer that was actually given to us last year, is that indeed UTA felt like the first, it being the first year, they weren't sure if we should bring Martin into the equation. As board members, we attend all graduations, and we did attend all the graduations this past year, and I would tell you that UTA put on a great forum. With the exception that there was one school, they were having their processional, and something went awry. And when that went awry, it backlogged the entire Coliseum to the tune that I think that that it took us an additional 30 minutes to get everybody seated, and they were literally crawling over people. And that was with one of the smaller graduating classes. If that should go awry with a class size of Martin or even at Bowie, we're in real trouble. Just because people were still outside when the music had stopped 3 times. I'm going to make a recommendation, or the motion at this point, that we go with the recommendation set forth by the administration, that we hold all but Martin High School at UTA and Martin High School continue its contract with TCU at this point.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Hibbs, second by Mrs. Sullins. Dr. Rice, comment?
One question. On looking contractually, from a fiscal standpoint, have we entertained, explored the options of multi-year contracts at this point with UTA? I know last year it was kind of new. We're going to see how it happened, evaluated it. Now I think we're pretty sold on it. So for this year going forth, have we looked at negotiating a 3 to 5 year plan locked in at this rate? And we've had this history for years at Daniel Meyer. Could we look at that with them as well?
We could look at it. We have not done that. We have not had those discussions with either of those facilities.
I would strongly urge that consideration. Thanks.
Seeing no further comments, please vote. Five oh.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Consider additional flooring and roofing projects. Dr. Cavazos, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Barron. And I'm going to give that floor to Cindy Powell. This is a presentation regarding additional bond projects that we want to bring forward. Ms. Powell.
President Barron, board members, Mr. McCullough, good evening. In November 2009, the voters of the Arlington School District approved a bond package totaling $197.5 million. And included in that bond package was flooring replacements for 38 schools and roof replacements for 21 schools. All those projects have been completed now, and to date, for the projects that we have budgeted and undertaken, we have about a $10.9 million surplus in total in the bond package. We have identified recently some additional needs that are within the scope of the 2009 bond program, and we would like to recommend that the board approve funding these from the surplus of the bond program. In particular, we've got flooring replacements at 5 schools. 2 of the schools had replacements built into the bond program, but they were partial replacements, and the remaining areas in their school are in very severe need of flooring replacements. And then we have 13 elementary schools, actually all prototypes, and these 13 schools all have a very similar problem with the roofing systems where they're leaking around the parapet walls. And so we're recommending that we make some repairs to replace that. The total cost of these projects is estimated at $472,650. The Bond Oversight Committee has discussed these potential additional projects, and Justin Chapa, the chairperson of the committee, is here, and if he'd like to come forward and make a brief statement on the committee's discussion and recommendation.
We had our last meeting on the 28th, and all present voted in favor of the changes, and be happy to answer any questions as to why we did so.
Mr. Chapa, this may be for you, may be for Ms. Powell. Ms. Powell, I see a lot of, go through a bunch of our schools, and some have, and Ms. Chapa, maybe y'all discuss this, some have carpet versus some have tile, and it used to kind of be a principal's decision. Do we have a set standard of what we do to create a consistency so when we do have replacements and bids, we're able to bid on mass scale or things of that nature, or the buy boards, we can go through that? Do we let the principals just decide, or how do we determine
Well,
what
our
flooring?
objective, and Mr. Carlisle can probably speak to this even better than I can, but we've tried to take carpeting out of the hallways. There's so much traffic, and with the hard flooring, we can sustain the life of that flooring for a much longer period of time, and so that's been our objective.
Also.
It is. It's easier to clean, and yes, we do, in many cases, obtain the flooring through buy board pricing, TASB buy board pricing.
So with this carpet that we're replacing, because I see it in some.
In the classrooms, we do still have carpeting.
Okay, so none of this carpeting's in the hallways or anything.
And that's correct.
And are we creating, Mr. Carlisle, I know you've been doing a lot of adjustments to the district. Have we kind of created a set standard of what we expect from each building on flooring and how that should be so that we do have some consistency within our schools?
Yes, we have. It'll be VCT vinyl composition tile in corridors, and we're using a carpet tile. And right now we have, I think, 2 different manufacturers of carpet tile that we're using in the district.
So we have a pretty set standard of what we're
Yes.
using to replace it. We know what we're
Correct.
getting life of things, and when
Right.
your maintenance guys do have to come in and just do some small replacements, they can
Correct.
do it on their own, or you're more familiar when you bid it out. That's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. Ms. Powell, I just for clarity purposes, the surplus bond funds are currently $10,879.15. If we approve the $472,650, then just clarifying that our remaining surplus balance is $10,398.
It's 10 million.
10 million,
Yes,
sorry,
right.
10 million. 398,265.
Yes.
Okay, okay. And with that, I move to approve as recommended.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Reich, second by Mr. Hogg to approve the additional bond projects as recommended. Please vote. Man. 5-0, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Schiappa. Next item on the list is to consider development of a legislative agenda, TASB Federal Relations Networks, and potential hiring of a legislative consultant. Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. I will I'll try to be a brief report as the Legislative Affairs Committee Chair of the board, which is myself, Mr. Pompa, and Mr. Hogg. We've met and have some points to outline for the board. You've all received the outline of the report. We are looking at basically a two-pronged approach that we'd like the board to consider. One being actually the development of a legislative agenda, and then 2, looking in concert with that legislative agenda, actually developing more specific legislative action items, and the possibility of hiring a lobbyist for the district. That would be something that if the will of the board allows, we will continue on as a committee in that capacity to look for that lobbyist, to do either a formal RFP process if it's necessary, or just solicit as needed. So with that up front, I'll just go through some of the background as to why we're looking at this and decided that this is the direction to go. First off, for us as a committee, for us as a board in total, we really feel that AISD needs better representation individually at the state level legislatively. We have heard over the years that there are committees and hearings at the state level that have superintendents and other personnel come and testify, but not many trustees. And it would be very good for Arlington to start being part of that discussion, part of that conversation, and rather than being in a reactive mode, which we are commonly in, to hopefully be in a proactive mode and actually help in the drafting of some of that legislation and those bills on the forefront with our input, taking our situation into consideration. And with that said, there's many things that a lobbyist would help facilitate and streamline that process rather than all of us going through quite a large learning curve as far as the true legislative process of who the key people are in the committees, when the hearings are taking place, what testimony is needed and coming up, and it might be a situation where we can go down, but it might be where something's happening that afternoon, and hey, guess what? If we have somebody down there on the Hill, they'll be able to lobby for us. We really think there's an opportunity for us to be educated as a board moving forward, and in return, developing the agenda, developing the action items, and then taking those and creating a communications campaign, an educational campaign with our local legislators, with key state players and organizations, and those types of groups. Let's see, there's a number of things that we can do on our own as individuals from a grassroots level. Being more educated and having a very good lobbyist to help guide us with that education process will probably help facilitate some of the relationships that we can build on a grassroots level. Additionally, we spoke about continuing on with this to form alliances with other trustees and other districts so that we can have, there's obviously commonalities of agenda items that we can move forward with together. The more force, the better. We have 1,200 districts in the state, so that means 1,200 superintendents, but guess what? That means close to 8,000 board members. So we have a lot of potential, and we really feel with our strategic plan, with our desire to become a premier district, that this is one of the areas to be ahead of the pack and not following the pack. So that's why we're really looking at that. And the other groups, obviously, we have a wealth of success already in a collaborative atmosphere within our city. We can just continue on with that with our chamber, with UTA, TCC, the city of Arlington, in working together so that we and our partners understand our issues, and they can work with their lobbyists and their groups and basically help us out in that lobbying effort. So that brings me to the specific legislative agenda focal points. Dr. Cavazos is going to be providing, after working with his administrative team, some district high-level concerns that we can formulate into true agenda action or legislative agenda words. I have some listed for you that we felt as a committee, with the current climate in the state, with the turnover of legislators that we are experiencing, there's a definite trend of what is to come in this next session. And obviously we have a funding number of funding lawsuits, so we'll see what happens there. We have a large turnover of legislators. Greater than 50% of our representatives are as far as experience, have 0 or 1 legislative session experience, and that's it. So for us as a committee, we look at that as, rather than going, oh my gosh, and oh, they're all out for funding cuts and really going after public education, not necessarily in a positive way, we look at it as a committee, and I think as a board probably as well, that this is a great opportunity. This is a great opportunity for us to really help educate all of those folks on what the true issues are. And so we feel that having an outside person facilitate that, the right outside organization facilitate that with us based on our direction as a board and in constant communication with that individual, that organization, it will really position us long-term in a very, very healthy spot. So I have some issues here. I'll just run through these quickly. Vouchers and choice, that's coming in this session, I'm sure, with the legislative turnover that there is. And what we felt as a committee is, rather than what is going to be resonating loudly in Austin from public education, we don't want vouchers and et cetera, we want to take a bit different tack and say, you know what, with our strategic plan and everything, we actually welcome competition. But we would welcome it with much more of a level playing field. And if we don't say that, there's a chance nobody else is going to. And so we really feel it's important to carve that niche out there and start beating that drum. So that's one example. I don't know, there's the voucher discussion comes and goes. Choice is developing. It might not be a significant thing at all this session, who knows, but we want to be on the forefront of that discussion and part of that discussion to educate all the way through to make sure that we've done everything we can to assure the best outcome for our district. Accountability, obviously the accountability system is being looked at and under review, and I think Dr. Cavazos will come with pretty detailed specific wording on that, but we all know that we would appreciate an accountability system that truly matches what we're trying to do as a district, as a state, as far as education. Funding, of course, that's going to be a no-brainer, and I think for us, we are involved on the equity side of things. I think adequacy is a discussion that we can also put in there with our legislative consultant or lobbyist, whoever that may be, just so that we are positioned to be able to, regardless of what happens with lawsuits, educate our legislators that we need equity, we want a fair playing field, but at the same time, that equity doesn't turn into, guess what, we're cutting everybody down to this level. It needs to be adequate. So even though there's different lawsuits and there's that legal mumbo-jumbo, if you will, I think that it's something that we can articulate well on paper and in person. The other fourth thing that we outlined as a committee was the current law with the 4x4 for our high school classes, and to really advocate for substitutions that match our college readiness goals as well as our career readiness goals. Physics as an example. Not every child needs to take physics, but that's how it is right now in our state system. And jump in any time if I'm misspeaking. So we want to focus on college, yes. We want to focus on the real need of career. The state has indicated with their pre-legislative hearings already that they are wanting to do more with career. So guess what? There's a big disconnect between the ideal and what they think versus what is happening and what we're mandated for. So that's essentially what we're looking at. So tonight, I'm hoping from the committee standpoint, if we can get the nod from our colleagues to move ahead with retaining a lobbyist, going through a solicitation process. If you are interested in putting a dollar cap on that would be fine, because we do need to know some of that up front. Some of the firms may not be interested at certain levels. That, and then the only other item that I'll conclude with is on our TASB Federal Relations Network stipend. Ms. Sullins went to DC on our behalf last year with TASB, and I know that she's actively filling out that application again this year. As a committee, we felt that it was also important whether the stipend application is approved or not by TASB to open that up to any trustee from our district. More representation is better in DC as much as possible. So if there's any other trustees, I know Mr. Pompa specifically demonstrated an interest. So I would put that out for the board's consideration as well. That if Ms. Sullins, I know, is interested in going, but if there's others as well, as a committee, we think, hey, the more the better. So with that, I'll open it up to Mr. Hogg if he has additional comments, and then for the rest of the board.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Reich. One thing I would say, the more the better, but we really only talked about 2. Because we do have cost concerns of how many are going up, especially on the Federal Relations Network. And I think we definitely think, Ms. Sullins, you've gone in the past, and Mr. Pompa, I know, expressed some interest to go. And through TASB FRN stipend, they are waiving one of the fees for one participant. So we definitely think 1 should go no matter what. And if 2 are accepted, we would, by all means, say 2. But I don't, as we discussed, I don't think we want 7 of us flying up to DC for that one, unless Ms. Sullins, who's been there before, really feels that's a need. I think more of us will be focused on attacking Austin a little more. with some of our time and dollars. One thing, Dr. Reich, I think you just skipped over a little bit, is through the lobbyist, he will also help us develop our legislative agenda, work with Ms. Powell, and I apologize, I had to step out to get a drink. He'll work with Ms. Powell, Dr. Cavazos, and the senior staff to really develop, and as you mentioned early, put in policy into, so that our legislative agenda does become a policy or law. That is one of the costs on there. Costs we kind of threw around and entertained, $50,000 mark, $70,000 mark if we want to, our colleagues want to put a cap on what we think the max we should spend on that. And we definitely, the committee definitely agreed we should have a cap on that, and if somehow something comes up and we have to go back and ask for more, we will come back and do that. But we definitely are in favor of a cap. Thank you.
So I guess with that said, I would like to hear what the rest of the board has to say, and then essentially we are, as a committee, making that motion to move forward with soliciting a lobbyist, and that our committee would take that charge and move forward with that for you, as well as, sorry, that would be the motion, but we also ask the fellow trustees to submit any other specific legislative agenda items to us within the next 2 weeks, so that we have more of a working document that we can submit back out to you all.
Can I ask you to hold the motion for a minute, and we'll
Sure.
continue the discussion. Mr. Hibbs.
Okay. Two questions there, Dr. Rice. And one is, when you're making your motion, is one of them to have a lobbyist, and then the second is to continue the committee so it can create the legislative agenda and seek out this lobbyist? Is that part of?
Well, I didn't really look at it as that our committee was concluding, just that if that makes it easier for the board, that we're willing to continue on that charge.
Okay. A few years ago, when I got onto the board, the idea of having lobbyists and PACs and things were new to me, and I really wasn't real supportive of it. And I'll be honest, it just seems like when we hear of what's going wrong in Washington, D.C., it's because there's a lobbyist. The more I started talking to our individual representatives in Austin and even at the federal government, every one of them told me that that it was recognized that we didn't have anyone speaking on our behalf last year in Austin when they were having those making a lot of tough choices and making choices that could have impacted Arlington School District in a different way. And hearing that come from our elected officials down there, it has swayed my opinion. And I do believe that seeking out a lobbyist to speak on our behalf and try to work, especially when it comes to the making sure that they're equaling out the districts and what we're getting per child and such is an important aspect, but even more the overall legislative agenda as it affects education. So I have swayed on this thought. Maybe I've evolved to say I'm in support of us looking at a lobbyist. I do think that we need to be fiscally responsible still, and I know one of the reasons that I wanted to strike that was to do that rather than striking a teacher from a job position. So, and we all voted in that direction. So, if we're looking at a cap, I think we had the cap of the lobbyist before at $60,000. Mr. Hogg, you said either 50 or 70. I'm willing to split the dime here and then say, why don't we look at 60, and if we can work within that parameter. If not, come back to the board. Or.
And Mr. Hibbs, I would say, we say 57 because we couldn't exactly remember what we spent, and so we were trying to figure out. So I'd ask Ms. Powell, I see them typing feverishly to figure out what it used to be.
We couldn't type fast enough. The last lobbyists we had, we paid $54,000.
54. So I think your 60 number would be perfectly fine. That's why we knew it was 50 to 70, right around that range. So,
yeah.
So we weren't sure which contract it was, but yeah, I think 60 would be fine.
Ms. Powell? Was that per year or per session or?
That was per year.
Per year, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things, sorry, before Ms. Sullins goes, one comment to speak to Mr. Hibbs. I hate the whole idea of lobbying. And for my career, I'm actually involved in an organization where I'm part of the PAC and chair of that PAC. And what I tell those folks is we might not like this, but this is the game. And that's how it's played, and we've got to participate. We've got to play. We can all be for reform and making these things go away, but right now this is how it is, and this seems to be a good way to stave off being trampled. The only other thing that I would say as far as the dollar amount is I don't know that our previous contract had really what we're looking at as a committee involved from a lobbyist. We are really looking at more of somebody that can help us very specifically with in-servicing, if you will, education for us, a little bit more structure there, as well as developing a communication strategy and having that contract really tied based on that performance. So I don't know if we can get bites at 60 or not, so I put that out there, but I don't want to go real high either, but I might ask for just a little bit more wiggle room just to make sure. So that the main thing is session's coming. It's coming very soon, and we've got to get moving on this. So if 60 is the absolute, that's great, and that's what we'll work within. But if you can entertain a little bit more, that will give us potentially a little bit more speed. We'll still look at 60, but if we have to, then we already know we've got that in our back pocket, and we can move so that we can get somebody in place rather quickly before the session starts. That's all.
Ms. Sullins?
Thank you. In response to the committee, the reality is that we don't have a level playing field in the public education funding in Texas, and Arlington schools deserve a level playing field. Our students deserve a level playing field, and the reality of that is we have to have some people on our team, and we have to have formal channels of advocacy to communicate exactly what is needed. So with Mr. Hibbs, at one point I was not sure, but in the last 2 years working more with our local representatives and also at the federal level, without a doubt, I believe that we need to provide the best channels of advocacy for our students. Now, Dr. Reich, as far as wiggle room, you have a dollar value on that wiggle room?
No. I think 70, just because we were talking 50 to 70. We can keep it at 60 and go with that. I'm fine. There's probably something that we can do there. So I don't want us to get bogged down on that detail necessarily, because honestly, we don't know what the market is right now. That was a few years ago. I just don't know if that is a good market rate to get the quality that we want. And I think it's essential that we get the best quality, somebody that has proven results that will be dedicated to us. And with that, we might have to pay a little bit more, but I don't know. I just don't know what the market is. So that's something that we still have to explore.
Dr. Reich, I would say I think 60 will be fine. If they have to come back, lobbyists do not bill hourly. They bill on per project basis, and so they will bill from a project standpoint. So they will look and allocate. What they'll do is they'll go through and figure out their hours, what it'll take to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, and then they will bill us back from that side and quote their entire project. So with that, when other things come about, if they feel there needs to be more, they can do it in a contract basis where they do some for the pre-SIM and then we bring back some. They may say, here's what we're going to do before, and then we need to do this for during session. Those are other ways you can do it. But I think 60 is enough for how they're doing this and what they're doing. I think we should be able to get a very high quality lobbyist in Austin. And as much as people don't like lobbyists, I've been in favor of them ever since I've been on the board. I think it's critical because I'd rather spend $60,000 to protect $10 million than let that money flow out there. And unfortunately, as Dr. Rice said earlier, we may not like the game. This is what happens. This is the way you play it. So I've been in favor of it for a long time, and I think it's something critical we need to do. And the other thing I would tell the board to start looking more down the line for is, as this position, as our fight in Austin is going to constantly keep growing every time. Ms. Powell and her staff does a good job, but they also run an entire finance department on our government relations. I see the role of, instead of possibly a lobbyist, sometimes you can go with an internal government relations expert, and that's something where you can go. So from that standpoint, this is much cheaper doing it this way than bringing on a full-time employee, especially to get one of the caliber you need to be able to do this type of work. So I think from that standpoint, it's a smart offensive and defensive move on our behalf.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and approve the Mrs. Sollins and Mr. Pompa to go to the FRN. All right, and I'd like a motion on just on the lobbyist.
Okay, well, as a committee, then we move to continue our charge as a committee to engage in active solicitation of a lobbyist for our district. Is that complete enough? With a cap of $60,000.
There you go. Thank you. Any further discussion? And that's coming from committee?
Yep, no second needed.
Please vote. Thank you. Motion passes.
Can I make one more comment, Mr. Barron?
Go ahead.
Just for the board to know that we are also working with the Chamber of Commerce and helping them in developing or reviewing their legislative agenda that they have developed internally, and that they are working with other, I believe, at least 8 other chambers. So we're taking that on as well for the board. Thank you.
That brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda? Ms. Powell.
President Barron, board members, there are 5 bids on the agenda for your consideration this evening, and in all cases, the administration recommends the lowest bids and the bids representing the best value to the district. We also have donations to report this evening. It's my privilege to report that our schools have received donations from the following individuals and organizations: the Arlington Chamber of Commerce, Benham REO Group DFW, Randy and Robin Bullock, First Rate, Arlington Women's Club Duplicate Bridge Department, the Arlington High School PTA, Kevin and Holly Brett, Arlington High School Speech and Debate Booster Club, the Lamar High School Football Booster Club, Lamar High School Girls Basketball Booster Club, the Martin High School Band Booster Club, John DeMore, Life Touch National Studios, Martin High School Choir Booster Club, businesses and individuals for the Bowles Junior High School 40th Anniversary Celebration, Walmart, Picture Day, and Glamour Craft Studio. So the donations presented for your consideration this evening total $62,037, and that brings our year-to-date total $209,061.
Thank you, Mrs. Powell, and thank you to our generous community. We appreciate it. Any discussion on the consent? I need a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hogg, second by Dr. Reich. Any further? Please vote. Consent passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a discussion item. Not done yet. Consider the process for naming the Sherry Street Elementary School. It's got want my name on it. We're gonna name it me? No. I will appoint a committee. Right now, for sure, the only person on the committee is Mrs. Pena, who will be the chair. And we will have posted on the AISD website a nomination process, as we've done in past years, to name this committee, and it'll take a while to get that online.
All right, we can get it by tomorrow.
No, it'll take probably.
No?
No.
He said not that long. How long, Mr. Harvey? Next week, all right. Next week. He said not that.
So stay tuned to the AISD website if you want to nominate a name for the new elementary school on Sherry Street. Historically, elementary schools are named for educators. Junior highs are named for former trustees, and high schools are named for Texas heroes. Mr. Hogg, you have a comment?
Mr. Barron, I just had a question. What, from staff's perspective, when do we need to have a name chosen? When I guess that's for Mr. Carlisle. When do we need to have everything start being created? What's kind of the time frame of when all of this needs to be done?
Well, really, from my perspective, the name, there are two things that are the name, of course, for the name on the building.
And colors?
And then a plaque. And fairly short time frame, but the quicker we can do that, the better off we are.
Because naming's also about the colors for the school, correct?
I don't know that.
No, the
colors
colors for the school are by a kind of the executive staff. If we have a principal by that point,
Okay.
then that person has input. But in the past, it's been more the executive director for elementary leads that effort. And then the mascot is with the principal when they get it.
So for the sign and all the work, when do you need all that done, Mr. Carlisle?
Probably by the the beginning of the calendar year, sometime.
Okay, so January
February.
sometime around there. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we don't want email applications, nominations. We want you to use the website, please. And it'll be online next week. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. All right, that brings us to the open forum for non-agenda items. I have one card. Oops. Persons attending the meeting. This second open forum segment of the meeting provides citizens with an opportunity to address the trustees on any subject except personnel. This is not intended to be a discussion or a debate, and trustees will not reply to the speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at an individual will not be tolerated. I have one card from the audience when your name is called. Mr. Flores, please come on up. You will have 5 minutes to speak. A lighted timer on the podium will assist you in pacing your presentation. A yellow light will illuminate when there is 1 minute left for you to complete your presentation. And when the red light comes on and the buzzer sounds, please end your presentation. Jose Luis Flores? We tried. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Barron. We've had a great start to the school year, and I'm happy to report that our school year started off very well. On the first day, we held our very first tweet-along, where I visited several schools around the district. And as you know, the first day of school is very important. It sets that tone for the entire year. And I have to compliment all our principals and teachers and staff for making that an exceptional day, that first day, and then continuing on through these weeks as we progress. So just really, really great job from our staff in doing that. Also, I'd like to recognize the offensive and defensive linemen of the Arlington High School. They won their 5th consecutive Texas Lineman Challenge state championship over the summer. The lineman challenges consist of events such as tire flip, truck push, bench press, power ball toss, tug of war, and hand-over-hand pull, right?
I've been out of the game a long time, Dr. Cavazos.
I just thought we'd throw that in there. Congratulations to Coach Philip Nelson and the students who participated, and you see a picture of them up on the screen. As a school district, we're honored to work with several groups that provided school supplies for our students, and we can't thank them enough. These are groups that have taken it upon themselves to join us in this effort and basically provide school supplies that we know are needed throughout our community. Through Kroger's Stuff the Bus school supply drive, we received 40 pallets of supplies, totaling nearly $74,000 in school supplies. The Junior League of Arlington provided more than 500 backpacks full of supplies to our students from Dunn, Pope, Short, Swift, and Wimbish elementaries. The School Rules Back to School Fair and Mission Arlington also provided school supplies to our students. The Fielder Road Baptist Church held a back-to-school bash for more than 1,000 students who attend the Hutchison Junior High and several of the feeder elementaries. And I've had the opportunity to visit, some of those back-to-school drives and supply drives, and I'll tell you that the parents and the students are just excited about the opportunity to get new school supplies for school. Again, that helps us as a community set that tone also for our school system. And so we greatly appreciate their efforts, and we want to publicly thank them for that. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Passos. Dr. Reich.
Is it possible to have that first slide put back up?
First one, the football team?
No, the one before that of the Tweet-Along Day.
There it is.
Okay, it's on TV. Good. I just want everybody to note on the top right, Dr. Cavazos is in a great outfit to walk approximately half a mile home with this student in 102-degree temperatures. So,
and he pointed that out to me as we were walking. He said, "Are you going to go like that?" And I said, "That's all I have. So yes, I have to go like this." And I will tell you, along the way, he looked up at me several times and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Why? The red and the sweat concern you for some reason?" But it was a great day, and I ended up with a home visit, and it was outstanding. Outstanding.
Yeah. So thank you for doing that. I think that was a great thing. The other things you mentioned, the back-to-school bashes, it was phenomenal getting around town that day. I know there were several of us as trustees bouncing into each other at these events. Thank you so much to the community out there for helping out. There's so much need. There's so much more need still. It's really great for those organizations to come through the way they have. And also, our community open houses that we had at Arlington and Lamar were extremely well received. Lots of participation from within the school, from alumni associations and boosters and student groups, and also the public's participation and interest was great, and it was so well received. From what we saw, what I saw personally, the public was extremely pleased at where our bond dollars have been going, and to showcase some of the great things our students are doing in our district. The only other thing is myself and Mr. Pompa were able to go to the Fire Training Academy new student presentation orientation, which was phenomenal. We have a great collaborative relationship with the City of Arlington's Fire Department, and we have our first group of soon-to-be graduates this year that will be coming through, and the new kids that are coming in, we're able to meet them and watch them as students going through this program for 1 year do some live demonstration exercises as far as putting out a car fire, putting out a propane tank fire, using a saw to cut through a metal door to get into a door, rappelling down the side of a mountain or the side of a building. Many different things that these students are doing, and it's literally changed the lives of those students. It's changed the lives of the fire department personnel that are involved in that process and that program. Our fire chief, Don Croson, was there and gave a very good uplifting and empowering talk to our new kids that are coming in this year. I posted this on Facebook. I just wanted, it's just easier for me to read it real quick. I took several pictures. There was lots of photos, so hopefully we can get that as an event on our district website to highlight a lot of those photos and what happened that day. But just to make sure I get this right, one of the photos was our incoming second class looking at our first senior class, acknowledging their work that has been done and their past work and the education that has yet to come. Specifically, I want to mention Rob Constantine from the fire department, Ginger Polson from our CTE department at AISD. They work together extremely well, and with their team that they have both here at the district and the fire department, they make this thing happen. So thank you to all of you for doing that for us. The main thing that I wanted to read from my Facebook post is thank you to all of them for their efforts in a program that embodies most all of the elements of our strategic plan and one that is sure to be a national benchmark program, as it really, really is. And I encourage anybody to go visit with those kids and with that program. It's phenomenal. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Hibbs. I want to share with everybody that Dr. Cavazos, I've got to tell you that you went the extra mile last week in kicking the school year off and being out there in public and tweeting along, as they go to say. You got a lot of exposure for the district, but I know that you did it because you wanted to show some enthusiasm and excitement for the kids about getting back to school. And I've just got to tell you, I admire you for going that extra mile, not staying in the office behind a desk. But I also want to congratulate this board. This summer, this board has been extremely, extremely active, and at events across Arlington throughout the summer. This past week, with all the different activities that were taking place, you made your presence known, and I received a lot of correspondence from parents, from other teachers saying they're excited. They're excited about the strategic plan. They're excited that it looks like the board has reached out to the individual schools, out to parents, really looking for community support, and that's kudos to each one of you. I mean, you've worked very hard. I've been able, over the past few weeks, to sit down with the group of individuals that are from the Hispanic community that are Spanish speaking is their primary language. To see me in one meeting where they're all speaking Spanish and I'm like a deer with headlights on, gave me the realization that as we move forward with our strategic plan, we have a community that we need to reach out and allow them to be able to have a voice. And I want to thank my fellow board members, Mr. Pompa and Ms. Sullins, and Dr. Cavazos. We held a little forum with some Hispanic parents that represented pretty much all the clusters in Arlington last night. And the feedback that they gave us will really allow us to move to get that engaged to the community, engaging all the community. So I'm excited about that moving forth. I think we walked away with some great ideas, but even more an understanding of where we're missing the mark. And as we're looking towards saying we're going to prepare every child, this is exactly where we start, being able to get these people involved. And again, I just have to tell you that I'm just so pleased the way this board has worked, the way that Dr. Cavazos, you have been out there, and the entire central administration and all the campus administrators. And then, of course, what the teachers are doing is phenomenal. And we can measure the success of our first week by the number of emails that we received. And you know what? That first week was absolutely awesome. People were saying good things are happening in their schools. to give you one idea of an opportunity that's coming up next week, on September 13th, there is what is called the National Texas Day of Giving. And the Arlington Education Foundation on September 13th has gone and worked with a group called Donor Bridge. And if on September 13th, not the 14th, not the 12th, but the 13th, if you go to Donor Bridge, they will help match funds that's given on that day. So this gives the opportunity for the Education Foundation to receive many additional dollars. And in some cases, they'll match it up to another $10,000 that if you give on that day, but you have to give through their site, and it's through the Donor Bridge. I think it's donorbridge.org, but you can Google it otherwise. So I would encourage anybody that's thinking about donating to causes that help education to give on September 13th.
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Hibbs, you're exactly right. Communication, communication, communication with everyone in the city. Dr. Vassos, congratulations on that tweet along. I was retweeting you all day on Facebook and on my Twitter, and it caused my mother to ask me to set her up on Twitter. So, and for one, I have to explain Twitter to my mother of what hashtags mean and what the @ signs, and I still don't think she understands it, but if you can get my mother on Twitter, the tweet-alongs work. So it's a great way to communicate. I encourage us to do more. Two real quick things I'd like to report on. October 2nd, we'll be participating with many other districts at the Be Proud rally. It'll be at the Verizon Theater in Grand Prairie. It's going to be held, right now I think there's about 12 school districts that are coordinating together. They're still working on the agenda of what it is, but it's really just to fill an entire auditorium, fill in Verizon Theater, and let all the legislators in Tarrant County and in Dallas County and the entire Metroplex know how important education is. I have to give credit to our South Lake School District. They're helping drive this, so I know a couple of us have been in contact with the trustees up there, and they're planning another work session, but just mark calendars, October 2nd. I think it's 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. right around there at Verizon Theater. I do like to give Mr. Barron the report from the audit committee, our one standing committee within this that myself, Mr. Hibbs, and Ms. Solons serve on. We had a great meeting tonight. We, in June, re-implemented a program of interns that Mr. Edwards has done a lot of work on. And we finally got to sit down with the interns. They were able to ask us questions. We were all able to ask them questions, and Mr. Edwards and Alexis, our other auditor, to work on some ideas. And I included a scope of our activity funds that our interns helped out with. And let me just give you an idea of what these interns were able to do. Normally it takes an entire month for Alexis, one of our full-time employees, to do the activity funds audit. And at the end of each year, Mr. Drollinger and Bryn in the accounting department, finance department, they ask for activity funds to be reconciliated at the end of each year or reviewed at the end of each year. Listen, I'm a sales guy, not an accountant. And so, so they do this, and it normally takes her about a month. Our two interns were able to take this task off of Alexis and guide through that entire process. They audited over approximately almost $4 million in our audits. But then more importantly, they came up with some suggested management actions, working with Ms. Edwards and Alexis to come up with this. And some of the main things, establish a process to monitor monthly reports and bank reconciliations. This is something the accounting department has already implemented, brought in. It's a great factor to protect the district's resources even more. So I can't thank Mr. Edwards and the audit department enough. It's a great intern program. These are one's an Arlington High School grad who's now at UTA finishing up her master's. We'll have her, her master's in accounting and then become a certified CPA. The other one is a senior at UTA also from ULIS, originally moved here from India in 6th grade. Al, and one of the most personal guys in there, and And these are two outstanding interns, and I think we're lucky to have them working in audit, and somehow they love audit, which I always find odd and interesting. But I understand, Mr. Edwards, it's kind of been interesting, that whole thing. But I just thank you enough. I would encourage the board. I provided, and you'll see this wonderful thing that Ms. Solons and kind of made the recommendation, and Mr. Edwards took it and ran with it, of a one-page report of exactly what the findings were, what we found, the conclusions, the suggested management action, and so we're right on. And then we're also, I think for the first time in a long time, and I know Ms. Powell and some of the other finance department is very excited, we will have our external auditors, Whitley Penn. Everything should be prepared and reported to us by Thanksgiving break. So that is an outstanding move up on that. So not only our internal auditors are doing it, but our external auditors will also come back with that report so they can review what the internal auditors are reviewing, and they can review everyone else of where it's going. So with that, I report, and I thank the audit committee for all their work, and I thank our audit department for all their hard work.
Dr. Cavazos, didn't we have a police officer do a tweet along the other day on a school bus?
They did. They were on a school bus and ensuring that motorists were stopping when the school bus lights were on, and the way they ensured that was to stop them and give them a ticket if they didn't.
Were there one or two?
There were several.
Tickets?
Ticketed, absolutely. Yep.
So, folks, if the bus has its flag out and the lights are flashing, you better stop, because you never know if there's a police officer sitting right in there. Thank you, Arlington Police Department. Okay, Mr. Secretary, what we got?
The only thing I have listed is that we've asked individual trustees to submit specific legislative agenda items to the Legislative Affairs Committee by September 20th.
You agree? Thank you very much. We are adjourned.